Hey folks, Quilly18 here, and by this time tomorrow, you should have your hands on Stellaris 2.2, the new free patch for the game that is going to completely transform the game for you. You may or may not have the MegaCorp expansion, which I do think is very good, but 2.2 is what we're talking about here because it dramatically changed everything. In fact, it changes so much that the game will probably be very scary and confusing the first time you load it. So this tutorial is to bring you up to speed on the new mechanics, and in particular, the primary mechanic is the entirely new way that planets work. Gone is the tile system, where there's a direct one-to-one ratio between populations and tiles. You know, one unit of population lives on one tile, which has one building. That is completely gone and transformed. In this game here, you can see that my capital of New Earth has a population of 64 people. That's a massive number of people, and yet I'm nowhere close to being at the maximum number of people. I haven't even unlocked all the building slots, which unlock based on population. So more on this in a second here. So this is the number one big change, and this is part of just the free patch 2.2, whether or not you pick up MegaCorp. Okay, so what's the deal with this? Well, the new population and building system in Stellaris is meant to give the game a lot more flexibility, a lot more ability to customize your planets, and also radically open up the potential for the future, both in terms of mods and future expansions. There's going to be a lot more possibility for awesome stuff going forward. There are two new basic resources as well. We've got, in addition to energy, minerals, and food, we now have consumer goods and alloys, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go. But basically, alloys are used to build spaceships and star bases. Minerals are no longer used for ships and no longer used for star bases. Minerals are still, however, used for mining stations and research stations. Consumer goods are a resource that are consumed by your population as part of their normal upkeep. They don't just need food anymore, they also need some consumer goods. How much consumer goods depends very much on their position in society, as well as your particular set of laws. Consumer goods are also consumed by various jobs to produce other things, such as resource. Okay, or research is what I meant to say. Let's talk about the planet here. Before I start talking about districts and buildings and what the difference is between them and why you want to build one versus the other, let's talk about population. On my capital here, which has 64 people, my people are divided into three stratas. There are rulers, there are specialists, and there are workers. Depending on your empire, you might also have a set of slaves down here as well. If you're playing a Gestalt empire, like a hive mind or a machine empire, you will likely only have two stratas. You will have complex drones and simple drones. You may also have biotrophies as a separate strata over there. So what's the deal? Well, these are your pops that are working various jobs. If I go and expand the workers, for example, and we'll scroll past clerks for a second, we will see farmers, miners, and technicians. Farmers, these are jobs that produce food. Miners are jobs that produce minerals, and technicians are jobs that produce credits. We can actually see the output. My 10 farmers over here are producing 75 food per month as part of their production. You can also see that there's little numbers here. There's some stacks. If I look at my clerks produce amenities and trade value. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But you can see I've got a stack of 15 Earthicans here. And if I click here, I can get a full breakdown of their deal. So this stack of 15 population are all identical. They're exactly the same race. They are all militarists. They're all clerks. They're all in the worker stratum. They all belong to the same faction and have the same happiness. They have the same political power. They all produce crime. Every pop on your planet produces crime, which is a new value in Stellaris 2.2. Most pops create the exact same amount of crime. Unemployed people do generate a little bit more because they're kind of cranky and bored, and cranky bored people might become criminals, for example. They have a certain amount of need of housing as well as amenities, and they produce something. Everyone produces something, so farmers produce food, miners produce minerals, etc., etc. Again, these guys are producing amenities and trade value, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And every unit of population also has an upkeep. Most biological pops will require one food per month, and they'll generally also require some amount of consumer goods to be happy. The amount that they need will depend on their rights as well as various other government picks. But in this particular empire of mine, my workers require 0.25 commercial goods per month to stay happy. My specialists are a higher tier of people, and they require a little bit more. So if I look at an artisan over here, the artisan requires 0.5 commercial goods per month to be happy. So they require twice as much just stuff. TVs, video games, that sort of thing. You'll see it also looks like they require 6 mineral per month. This is not really part of their true maintenance or upkeep. Instead, this is their job. Artisans is a job that turns minerals into consumer goods. So these guys convert 6 minerals per month into 7.3 artisan goods per month, thanks to a variety of different modifiers. So my high stability on this planet, for example, is letting us get a lot more consumer goods from each artisan than we should for free. It's not that they work faster, they just work more efficiently. So it's really, really fantastic. So you can break this down and keep an eye on different strata and different specific subgroups. We could have looked at some of the workers. I've got some farmers over here. So I've got some robot farmers. Their upkeep is simply energy. They also, because these are basic robots, not, synths or anything like that, they also don't have any happiness or political power of anything of the sort. So those are your population. So let's flip back over to planet summary screen, and how do we manage a population? How do we build stuff, and what do we deal with? So if we look down here, again, my population, I have 64 people on this planet. I have 63 jobs, which means I have 1 unemployed person. I also currently have 0 housing available. My planet is full to the brim. There is nowhere else for people to live. Now, more people could be born here or migrate to here or something. The population could grow, in which case I'd actually have homeless people, which makes people very unhappy, and you want to avoid that. I also have a certain number of amenities. I have 6 to spare here, which, means it's a positive number, which is good. Everyone's getting all the amenities that they want, but we don't really have a lot of extra. It's worth noting that extra amenities leads to high amenities, which leads to bonus population happiness, which is a good thing. So having extra amenities is not necessarily a waste. We also have our total number of districts over here. So what are districts and what are buildings? These are the things you do actually construct on your planet. Now, the number of districts you can have is determined by the size of your planet. So this is a size 16 planet, so I can have a total of 16 districts. And if you do the math here, 7 plus 3 plus 1 plus 5, that equals 16. I have maxed out my districts on this planet. I cannot build any more. There are 4 types of districts available to be built. There's the 3 basic ones here: agriculture, which gives farming jobs; mining, which gives miner jobs; and generator districts, which give technician jobs. These make money for you. Each of these 3 basic districts here produce 2 housing and 2 jobs, a nice 1-to-1 balance. And they are very good to build early on your planets, because when your population is low, you don't need massive amounts of housing. You just need to make sure you've got plenty of jobs for everyone that's there. So a 1-to-1 ratio is great when you're just starting out. What's the deal with city districts? Well, city districts give you only 1 job instead of 2, but they give you a whopping 5 housing. City districts are how you can grow your planets to very large sizes by having lots and lots of people. Now, if you have lots of housing but not very many jobs, you'd just end up with a bunch of unemployed people, which would be no good. But this is where buildings come in. So whereas districts always produce some amount of housing to various degrees, buildings tend to just allow for jobs. For example, if I take a look over here, my alloy megaforges, all they do is provide 5 metallurgist jobs. And it tells you right there, metallurgists are people that turn minerals into alloys. So this is very good. Minerals are good for building buildings, but if you want spaceships, you need alloys. So by building these alloy forges, I will have people employed in converting minerals into alloys for me. So buildings almost exclusively produce jobs for you. Very few of them have any passive effects. Very few of them have any housing. The one example, or exception rather, I can think of is the luxury residences building over here, which provides 3 housing and 5 amenities. To me, the luxury residences sort of feels like a bit of a band-aid or stopgap while you get your empire properly built up. But it is worth noting, I do have a luxury residence over here on my capital. Maybe I need to get rid of it in favor of something else. You'll notice that I have a building here ready to be upgraded. These are my research labs. Currently, this is the base level research lab, which allows for 2 research jobs. The upgraded version, the research complex, allows for 5 researcher jobs. This is generally what you're going to see. Districts do not have upgrades. Buildings do have upgrades, but they're not as frequent. You don't have to spam them. You don't have to do bulk upgrading, and really you don't need to upgrade this until you really need more jobs. Actually, a great example is if I look over here on Rundor Prime. Rundor is one of my newer planets. It has 11 people on it, and I already have 17 jobs. I have a builder slot open over here. I can build a new building But I don't have one in there because buildings will generally just give me more jobs, and I don't need more jobs. I'm good. It is worth noting that if I were to build a building that provides some sort of ruler job or some sort of specialist job, the people who are currently workers would go up. They would promote themselves to the higher tier jobs because who doesn't want a fancier job? So if I did build a building that had some sort of specialist role, it would get filled, and most likely it would simply be my mining districts or agricultural districts that would lay empty looking for workers. So there might still be a reason that I would want to build this if it would become very important, say, for me to build another alloy forge as quickly as possible. Then I could do that, and then these buildings would simply be empty. So in your outliner, when you see the message that you're missing a building, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to freak out. What I do is I check, okay, yeah, you've got an empty building, but do I have anyone unemployed? No, in fact, I'm not going to have any unemployment anytime soon. I'm not going to run out of housing anytime soon. I'm good on amenities. There's really no rush. So I'm not worrying about that. Now, I talked about how the maximum number of districts you can have is based on the planet's size. The maximum number of buildings you can have is based on your population. So Rundor here has 3 building slots available. When I hit population 15 on this planet, this building slot will become available. When you reach population 75, all your building slots will be unlocked. Your population can continue to grow beyond that, but you won't get any extra building slots for that. And then it'll become more important for you to upgrade existing buildings so you can have as much housing as possible. Planets also have features. So if I click here, I can get a list of planetary features. So we've got some blockers, and then we've got a variety of other features over here. Features primarily increase the maximum number of a specific type of district you can have. So fungal caves increases my maximum number of agricultural districts by 2. Note, this does not increase the maximum number of total districts I can build. If a planet had 0 features, and it were size, let's say it was a size 22 planet with 0 features, I could still build 22 districts. It's just that the only districts I would be allowed to build would be city districts. I would have no ability to build any other kind of districts. So districts generally unlock more stuff. This planet actually has 2 rare planetary features, and that is the Spiral Hewn Mine and Loop Plowed Farm. They just increase the max by 4 each. And again, that doesn't let me pack more stuff on the planet. It just maybe gives me a few more options about how I build up my districts. Blockers generally reduce the number of districts available. So dangerous wildlife actually gives me a -2 to maximum districts. So I actually, let's say I cleared everything out and I just had this dangerous wildlife over here. That would mean I'd only be able to build 20 districts instead of 22. Once I cleared that out, then I would have access to the full 22. So currently I have considerably less than my maximum. I have 7 less, so I can only build 15 districts currently because of these blockers. Sometimes clearing the blockers, all it does is lift the maximum, lift that limiting factor. Some of them do something a little bit special. This glacier has the -1 max district. It also, once I clear this out, it will make a geothermal vents special feature available, which will increase the maximum of generators by 3, which is why you can see for my generator districts, we've got this hashed out mark, because that is the potential number of generated districts I will be able to do once that gets cleared out over here. Some special districts do something slightly different. For example, on Alpha Centauri, I have a bubbling swamp. A bubbling swamp special feature, I said district, but special feature, enables me to build a gas extraction well. This is a special building which isn't available for most planets, and is only buildable where there's a bubbling swamp. There's a special building that gives me a gas extractor job, and a gas extractor produces exotic gases. This is one of the new special resources available. There's volatile motes, exotic gases, and rare crystals. These are special and rare materials, but they still see use for a lot of things. For example, over here I have a hollow theater building. This is a building that provides 2 entertainer jobs. Entertainers consume consumer goods and turn them into unity and amenities. So you get more unity for traditions and more amenities so your people stay happy. So this hollow theater has 2 job slots. If I were to upgrade it to a hyper entertainment form, it would have 4 job slots instead. Same number of building slots, but twice as many jobs, which is great. It does require 50 exotic gases to build, It also requires 1 exotic gas per month to maintain, so the higher tier buildings need those sorts of rare resources. It is worth noting at this point that one of the new features in 2.2 is a special market over here. You do start the game with an internal market, and then later on it will get upgraded to a galactic market, and it simply allows you to buy and sell resources. Your internal market will only be able to do the base of minerals, food, alloys, and consumer goods. And later on with the galactic market, you'll also be able to buy and sell volatile motes, exotic gases, and rare crystals over here. You can also set up monthly orders. This is one of the reasons that having a deficit in some field is not a big deal. The fact that I'm running negative 13 consumer goods every month does not concern me at all. First of all, I've got a huge bank, but secondly, I can buy them whenever I need them, very trivially. So, like, you know, I could go and buy an extra 500 consumer goods for 1,100 credits, and I don't have the credits, although I do have plenty here. I could sell a bunch of minerals or something like that, something I'm getting in excess, and that's okay. Trading is, you know, is a reality, right? In real life, you have to sell stuff and you have to buy stuff, and this is how we do it. You can also set up an automatic trade here if you don't want to worry about it. So I could set up an automatic trade to buy 13 commercial goods every month. I don't really care about the price, so we'll do that. And if I were to let it run, this would actually turn to a value of 0 because I would be breaking even thanks to the trade over there. So that's quite nice. The slave market is only available if you do have the MegaCorp thing, but it does allow you to buy and sell slave population if you would like to do that sort of thing. So that's the trade market. Let's see. Did I cover everything over here? I believe I did. So how would you build this? Really depends. If you want some advice on like how would you start it off, I have found so far that it seems to like the strongest thing to do is to really focus on just building your districts at first. Okay, basic jobs, basic resources that you're going to need for a lot of things. I do recommend one of the first things you do is do build a second alloy forge. You start with one on your capital when you start a new game. You'll probably want a second one, but do work on your base rural districts. It'll pay off pretty well. You can change later on. So for example, I am nearly full. I have no housing available over here. And so, I mean, I also have unemployment. So for my unemployment, I might want to upgrade, say, my research lab to the research complex, so that'll take exotic gases as well, but it'll, instead of having 2 researcher jobs, it'll have 5. Hey, that sounds good. I'll do that. So once that finishes building, I will no longer have an employment, but I'm still short on housing and I would like my capital to keep growing. So what I'm going to do is my mining districts over here, you know what? I don't really need this mining district. I've got ludicrous amounts of minerals, so I'm going to replace this mining district with a city district. I'm going to do that because while instead of having 2 miner jobs, I'm only going to have 1 clerk job. I'm going to go from 2 housing to 5 housing. So a lot more housing, and I'm going to turn this planet slowly more and more into an urban planet. Lots of housing, no real basic jobs. Instead, we're going to focus on the fancy building jobs, the specialist jobs. Specializing is absolutely a thing that exists in Stellaris 2.2, and that actually happens automatically. Notice how Alpha Centauri and Rundor are both referred to as rural worlds. Rural. I have a hard time saying that for some reason. I don't know why. This is a world where Stellaris, and this is determines automatically, that Stellaris knows that right now, most of your people are working in your basic districts, some combination of agriculture, mining, and generator districts. These are rural jobs. These are jobs where you employ worker class people as opposed to specialists. We have more workers than specialists over here. As such, Stellaris has simply labeled Alpha Centauri Prime as a rural world. And on a rural world, your workers produce 2% more output. So your workers, which work in these districts, are working more efficiently. That's great. This changes dynamically. If, as Alpha Centauri grows, if I were to start producing, say, a bunch of commercial zones, not commercial zones, civilian industries. Civilian industries have artisan jobs. Artisans turns minerals into consumer goods. If you have a bunch of civilian industries, Stellaris will suddenly label this planet as an industrial world instead of a rural one. And on an industrial world, your artisans are 5% more efficient. They consume the same amount of minerals, but will produce 5% more consumer goods for you. So you might want a world that is heavily focused on just civilian industries. I suspect there's specialization tags for a large variety of different things. I believe you can have farming-oriented worlds if you just have a lot of agriculture. There's some buildings, like a food processing building, that gives you a 15% boost to, say, food output. So it all of a sudden becomes very incentivized. If you find a building or a planet where the amount of, say, agriculture districts you can build is very high. What about Rundor? It's not bad. It is a bigger planet, so that helps. What's the mix here? Yeah, it so happens that all these planets are relatively balanced in their districts here, but there's no guarantee of that. You could find a planet that has very few generator districts, but a lot of agriculture districts. Hey, maybe specialize this into a farming place. Lots of agricultural districts, and then build the food processing facilities, and I'm betting there's a tag for that specialization. I'm looking forward to that being ripped apart by people, and a wiki page coming up for like all the breakpoints for these types of worlds and what the different bonuses are. But specializing is absolutely a thing. Okay, I think we've beat these things to death. There's basically just one more major topic to talk about. Let's say two. The first one I'm going to address is very, very quick, and that has to do with empire size. It has always been the case in Stellaris that the bigger your empire is, the more expensive technologies and traditions become. It's a bit of an anti-snowballing mechanic. Now, generally speaking, assuming you were smart with your expansion, the bigger you got, the more science you made, and the amount of science you were making far outstripped the amount of increased cost from your empire size, okay? So for every population you have, the cost of a technology went up, but as long as you did a good job of organizing your empire, you would get a lot more science from all that population than the cost would go. The same thing is true now. There's an explicit empire size modifier and an explicit administrative cap modifier, and it tells you what the cost gains are. I think this tooltip's going to be updated because that technology cost of 0.27, I think is actually like plus 27% or something. I might be wrong, but I believe that's the case. In addition to affecting technology and tradition costs, this now affects campaign costs as well as leader upkeep and cost. There is no longer a cap on how many leaders you can have. Instead, leaders cost you monthly maintenance, and the bigger your empire, the more expensive that becomes. Now, you will go over your administrative cap. What's the administrative cap? The administrative cap is how big your empire can be before you start accruing these extra costs. So I have an administrative cap of 70. My empire size is 132. If my empire size were 70 or lower, I would have 0 increased costs. The administrative cap is not a hard limit. You don't hit it and then stop. It's just that's where the costs start to accrue. If you are a normal civilization, it really is like, no, you're just going to keep growing. That's the way it is. You're going to accept the increasing costs and just make sure that you're being efficient. If you are a corporation, however, a MegaCorp, like I am here, the penalty for being above your empire size is increased by 50%. As a MegaCorp, it's much more painful to grow above your administrative cap. However, as a MegaCorp, your initial cap is a little higher. Normally, it starts at 30. As a corp, you get an extra plus 20, so your cap is 50. And then on top of that, maybe you're going to add more and more modifiers. The higher you can increase your administrative cap, the longer you wait until these penalties start to kick in. And even when they kick in, they're not going to be as severe because you've got more of this extra buffer. This is very important as a corporation, but is probably good for all empires. So again, don't let the administrative cap, don't think of it as a hard limit, but do think of it as, yeah, I need to make sure I'm efficient, especially if you're a corporation for your expanding. So that's one new feature, and then there's like some extra breakdowns of some extra info here. It's quite nice to look at. But the other new thing to talk about is trade value. So we had a bit of a reference when we were looking on our planet here. We were looking at clerks, and it says clerks produce trade values and amenities. Amenities is easy, makes people happy. What's trade value? Well, population produces trade value, and by default, trade value is converted into credits. If we go and mouse over energy credits, you'll see a line in here that says trade. So energy credits produced, I produced 426. 163 of that is from trade. Pops produce trade value, which is trade, which gives you money. In addition to that, you will find, the more colonies, each colony has a trade value. So if I look at the Alpha Centauri, it has a trade value of 27. If I look at Rundor over here, it has a trade value of 12. In addition to that, as you wander around, you might, if I hold Alt over here, you might find some systems of trade value. So for example, Plov over here has 5 trade value. That's the ring with the diamond ring over here. Trade value is not a resource in any normal way. It's just, you found plants that smell nice and make a good perfume or something like that. That's all trade value is. It's a very ambiguous, oh, this is a cool thing, let's, that we can sell. By default, trade value in a solar system is collected by a starbase, not an outpost. So if Jaundice over here had trade value, the fact that I have an outpost, like I've claimed the system and I have an outpost over here, this would not collect the trade value. However, as soon as you upgrade it, just one time, that's all it takes. If you have upgraded your outpost to a real starbase, then at that point it can start collecting trade. Okay, and you can see here the starport, it actually says collection range +1 because an outpost is a collection range of effectively 0. A starport gives you 1 point of collection range, so it'll collect any trade within its own system. Now that can come from a random thing like this. So you can see here, this asteroid has 3 trade value and this asteroid has 2 trade value. As a result, this starport here is collecting some amount of trade because it has a range of 1. You can increase the range of collection of a starport by building trade hubs. I don't know if I have a good example of it. Yeah, probably. So in Zarum over here, Zarum itself has 4 trade value. I also have 9 trade value in Zira. I do not have an upgraded starbase here, but the trade value is green. And if I let go of Alt, it doesn't show up here. I don't know if there's an example of one. Oh, there we go. Hastily. You can see this trade value here is not green, just like this energy here. I have not built a mining station here to collect the energy. There's nothing I can build in Hastily to collect the trade other than a starbase. Either I have to build a starbase here, or, again, like in the case of Zir, the starbase in Zarim is actually collecting this trade. If I mouse over this trade value, it actually says 9 trade in the Zir system. Oh, I thought it would tell it what would be, I'm sure it tells me somewhere what it's getting collected from. But anyway, the starbase in Zarum has a trade hub. What trade hubs do now, as of 2.2, is they increase your collection range by +1, and they can stack. So the starbase in Zarum can collect trade from both Zir and Ilex because it has a range of 1. If I built a second trade hub, it would also be able to collect trade from Isval and Zedran and Esquela and Kornephoros over here. Stack more trade hubs, and you have longer reach for your trade, which is awesome. And that eventually trickles, all trade must trickle to your capital. And that's going to happen along trade routes. And we'll talk about that in 1 second. But I want to say, trade value is not just money. If you look at your policies over here, you'll have a policy on trade. By default, it's set to wealth creation. Each point of trade value earns you energy credits. However, instead, you can go consumer benefits, where trade value will earn still some money, but then consumer goods. Or marketplace of ideas, it still earns you money, but also unity. So you can change your trade policy depending on your situations. What do you need more right now? Money? Well, then maybe this. You low on consumer goods like I am? Maybe you want consumer benefits. You got lots of money and lots of consumer goods? Hey, who doesn't love unity? So you can tune what your trade gets converted in if you would like. Now, the trade system ties into the new pirate system. No longer do pirates randomly spawn in disconnected systems. Like Carenza over here is not owned by anyone and therefore would normally be quite likely to spawn pirates. That is no longer the case. Instead, piracy happens along trade routes because all trade must flow to the capital. So there's a new trade route map mode where if you click this, by default, it selects your capital starbase over here, but you can click. So let's say we click on Zarum over here, because that's what we're looking at. So we've got this selected. We know that it's collecting 13 trade. Collection range 1, protection range 1, trade protection. It's going to New Sol. Now it says 18%. Only 18% of the trade from Zarum is actually reaching my capital. The rest of it is being stolen by pirates. And if I click on this, I can see, you can actually see the line here of the path that it's taking, step by step. So it's getting through here, that's fine, that's fine. Whoa, what's happening? It hits the Rundor system and it starts to get pirated. And then more piracy in Procyon and more in Alpha Centauri. And we've got these little symbols over here. So Rundor, skull and crossbone. Any system with a skull and crossbone, piracy is present or potentially present. Red in particular means it's absolutely happening. If I look at one of these gray ones, so for example, in Iridigus over here, it's got a gray piracy number because technically it's got some amount of piracy. Its piracy is currently at 1. So negative 1.01 is how much money the pirates are trying to take. It has a maximum piracy of 1.25 over here. When you fly a fleet through a system, it reduces that piracy number potentially all the way down to 0, depending on how long you stay there and how long the anti-piracy strength of the fleet is, which is this value over here, Piracy Suppression. Small ships are much more efficient at being anti-pirate things because they're very fast and agile. But, so Ridigus has theoretically some piracy in it at a value of -1, but not enough to overcome its protection value. So every system has the shield. This is how much trade is protected. So up to 7 points of trade going through Ridigus is immune to piracy. And in this system, there's not much piracy present because there's not much trade going through it. The amount of trade going through here is not exceeding the trade protection, so piracy is never really going to be an issue. But that's not the case in Rundor. In Rundor, there is 49 points worth of trade, some of which is coming from starbases like Zarum, and some of it's being generated in Rundor itself because there's a colony here that has some trade value. Our trade protection in the system is only 7. 7 is much lower than 49, so pirates are showing up, and they're showing up with great eagerness. And right now, the piracy effect in the system, so it's got a total of -10 points of piracy, but I've got 7 points of protection, so you take that out, which leaves us to the -3, okay? -3.63 amount of trade is being stolen in the system. So I could patrol some ships through here to bring down the current piracy back down to 0, but that's only temporary. Unless I leave my fleet parked here, those pirates will come back up over time. Same thing as Procyon, same thing as Alpha Centauri. So what can you do to prevent them more permanently? Well, that's where trade protection comes in. Now, these systems here all have 7 points of trade protection, which isn't very much, but I'm sure I can probably find a better example of trade protection somewhere. Like in Plov over here. So Plov has 35 points of trade protection. You would need more than 35 points of trade flowing through the Plov system before pirates would start to show their ugly heads. Why does it have so much trade protection? Well, if we, let me pop out of trade mode and click on the starbase. This starbase has hangar bays. And if you look, it says trade protection +10. In fact, all of your offensive things like gun batteries and missile batteries add some amount of trade protection now. So both the gun and missile do +5, and the hangar bays are giving us +10. Because, I don't know, fighters are like good at like digging around everywhere and rooting out pirates a little bit more effectively. Sort of like corvettes over here. So now you're going to be building some of these defensive structures on your starbases in places more than just on the edge of your empire to defend things. Now that's my Plov starbase, that's sort of what it's there for. But really what I need is I've got the Perquim system over here with the starbase. And that's actually got a couple of hangar bays. If I go back to the trade map mode, this system has tons of piracy protection. But not only does this one do it, like Umik and Neats over here, they have no starbases, but they're not complaining about piracy. Why not? Well, if I look, this system also has 35 points of trade protection. And in fact, Khabaros also has 35 points of trade protection. How is that possible when there's no starbase here? Well, the other thing that your defensive structures like hangar bays and missiles and all that do is they add +1 to your protection range. By default, stations protect their own system. By adding those defensive modules, you can add +1 and another +1 and another +1 of trade protection range, so it covers this whole area. So Alpha Centauri, Procyon, and Rundor have problems with piracy. What I could do is I could add a bunch of defensive modules in Paith, although it's currently full and I don't have better starbase tech, or I could build a starbase maybe on Procyon over here and give it, you know, a hangar bay or two, and then it would cover this entire area with trade protection, which is very cool. And to do that, and by doing that, you would max out your money. Every now and again, go to your trade map mode, click on your capital, because your capital will show you all the trade routes coming to it, and trade only counts if it can reach your capital. If for some reason your empire gets split in two by a hostile force and you don't have the ability to move through it, then you will have disconnected trade routes and you get nothing. But take a look at all your trade routes to find out if any of them are being pirated, and clearly Zarum is, then figure out where it's getting pirated, and then nip that in the bud before it becomes too much of an issue. Pirates can actually spawn in systems with piracy as well, like hostile fleets, so you can deal with that. Now, your fleets do have a new patrol mode. So there's a patrol button over here. If I click that, and then I click on Rundor, My fleet here will patrol back and forth between these systems. It'll keep wiping the piracy out as it does that, which is going to be wonderful. Again, not a permanent solution, because I may need my fleet to, fight a war at some point, even though I am a pacifist, but that'll solve it for now until I build another starbase here, and I'm actually not at my cap, so I probably will do that. And later on, when you can get better starbases with more slots, you can have the trade, you can keep adding trade protection modules, and they'll reach further and further and further away and give more total trade protection. In fact, you might be able to dismantle some old starbases as you build more of them that have great trade protection. So that's kind of cool. It also means that civics and traditions and things like that give you more starbase capacity is actually a really great way to improve your trade by quite a bit, which is kind of neat. I think that covers all the new 2.2 features. Again, I didn't actually look at the MegaCorp stuff in terms of building branch offices and things. That's actually quite a bit simpler in a sense to get started in, or it's more clear. If you're playing a MegaCorp, you sort of know what you're getting into in terms of building branch offices. I will put in a note that if you are playing a criminal syndicate, it will be a lot easier for you to get your criminal branch offices to stick if you build them on bigger planets where you can have at least a couple of building slots unlocked, because as a criminal syndicate, each building you have increases the crime, and the higher the crime on the planet, the harder it is for you to get kicked out of that planet. So if you do it on a planet that's got 50 or more people, then you'll have 2 building slots unlocked, and you can build 2 buildings that generate a ton of crime and really lock yourself in there. But again, that's another topic. I really want to go and put a cut in here. 35 minutes, that's me with a short tutorial on 2.2. That's about as short as I think I can make it. Hope you find this useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.